I'm AJ.
I'm Sunny.
I'm Randy, and this is Bourbon, Wine, and True Crime, a podcast where three sleep-deprived but surprisingly energetic friends sit down once a week to drink virtually and discuss true crime. My voice isn't here this morning. Hello, ladies.
Hello.
Why, hello.
It's very early.
It is a bit early. It is.
So, Sunday morning. It's 10:30-ish our time in the Mountain Standard Time. Sunny's a little bit earlier than that.
9:30. Yep.
We were
Brutal.
back from our hiatus where I was out watching people supposed to be training for a month in the backwoods of Louisiana.
You know what? It's the thought that counts.
And
there was
we're just
very
thankful
little.
we're back.
Yeah,
We're happy that you're here.
It was a time.
And that you're in one piece.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because apparently that's a thing.
Trying to do a podcast with just a torso would have been challenging. So glad that all of the pieces made it back.
All of the pieces made it back. I've been sleeping my ass off because they had us in it was a 50-person bay with 56 people. And there was lots of snoring and farting. So there's only 2 women in one bathroom. And
I can't. Just, you know how weird I am about being able to share a room in general, especially sharing a bathroom with literally anyone. So absolutely not.
You had to hold your farts in for a month.
No one else did.
Face. You'd have like swollen face, just like
I would. They're like, does your face always look like that? I was like, thanks for noticing. It's the farts.
I want to, in 9 months, I want to circle back around so I can give my real opinion about things. But for now, I will just say,
circle back.
Okay, so given that it's this early in the morning, what you got in your cups, ladies? You got a cup?
I got coffee.
You got coffee?
Yeah.
Oh, see, I had a couple of cups of coffee, and then I was like, no, I'm gonna want like a mimosa, but I didn't have anything that was bubbly. So I guess I'm doing the Randy job today. I've got the vodka.
Got the vodka.
It's some grapefruit juice and a splash of sparkling tonic water, and it's yummy.
This morning, ladies, it's a tale of 2 mugs, really. So the first mug is coffee. The second mug is courtesy of our darling Randy, actually. And that is Glühwein that you had brought to me in Colorado, because I figure something kind of like spicy, warm in the morning.
Yeah.
It's like coffee adjacent, right?
Coffee adjacent.
Wait, what is that? What did you call it? I've never heard of that.
It's Glühwein.
Glühwein.
It's hot wine.
Yeah, it's spiced.
Hot temperature, not hot, like spicy.
Cool. That's neat.
Yeah, so it's got all sorts of like cinnamon and nutmeg and star of anise and that kind of thing.
That sounds good.
I was gonna have, the only alcohol I have in the house is vodka and wine, but I have to go to the gym today, so that's later. I'm also not going to work tomorrow. They did this thing. It's like, I'm in Colorado and it's cold, and they're like, okay, so we're gonna start working out in the afternoon when it's warmer. I'm like, okay, it's February, it's fine. They did it for exactly 4 days, and they're like, back to the morning. God damn it. Okay. So, AJ, you have our case today.
Yes.
I do. I'd like to first, though, dedicate this episode to the woman who gave birth to me. Today is her birthday.
Oh,
happy birthday.
Happy birthday, Mama. Thank you for pushing me out of your loins. I really appreciate you growing me inside of your belly.
Yes.
You nailed it. So happy birthday, Mom. This episode is for you. She has started listening to our show and she loves it. So I hope she hears this. Happy birthday, Mom. I love you very much.
Happy
Mama
birthday.
Long. We love you long time.
She loves you long time too.
Dancing with your mother on New Year's Eve. Woo!
Yep. So today's case I've been working on for a little while, and I've been obsessed with investigative genetic genealogy. So when that Golden State Killer was that when that case was busted wide open and this was credited for that, it was like just full on obsession after that, trying to figure this out and like getting other cases. And so I wanted to start with a little bit of background on what is investigative genetic genealogy, other than it's the new career that I want to go for. Okay, so this is from actually, okay, let me take one step back. Have y'all heard of that new open AI engine?
Like Dolly?
No, this one is called Chat Open AI.
It sounds familiar.
It may have, why is my eyes are just leaking, which they like to do in the morning. So I'm just like, hey, would you like eyeliner down to your knees? No. I'll bet that it's similar to Dolly, but continue.
Okay, so you can go on it and ask it to explain anything. And it's like the Google, but it'll write like the page for you, or it'll give you all the information.
AJ, it's like what? Did you just call it the Google?
The Google. I did. Google. The what is the Bing, the Facebook.
The Facebook.
So
the interwebs.
The interwebs, yep. So I went onto this open AI and I put explain investigative genetic genealogy. And so this is what it gave me back. Oh, now I have to scroll back up. Okay. All right. Investigative genetic genealogy is the use of DNA analysis and genealogical research techniques to solve crimes and identify unknown suspects or victims. This emerging field combines the power of genetic analysis with traditional genealogical research methods to help law enforcement agencies solve cold cases and bring justice to victims and their families. It's really being hailed as like, now there will never be a cold case. As long as there's some sort of genetic fingerprint left at the crime scene,
I'll be able to trace it in some way to somebody.
Right. So this is really changing the landscape. The process of investigative genetic genealogy typically starts with a collection of a DNA sample from a crime scene. This sample is then analyzed to determine the genetic profile of the suspect or victim. The genetic profile is then compared to a large database of genetic profiles, such as the Combined DNA Index System, or CODIS, to see if there is a match. If there is no match in the database, investigators may use genealogical research methods to build a family tree and identify potential relatives of the suspect or victim. By tracing the ancestry and family connections of the suspect or victim, investigators can build a list of potential leads that can further be investigated. Investigative genetic genealogy is a rapidly developing field and is having a major impact on the ability of law enforcement agencies to solve crimes. As technology improves and the number of people who have voluntarily submitted their DNA to genealogy databases continues to grow, the potential for this technique to solve crimes will only increase. So that's a little bit of background on what that.
So excited that exists. Although we miss the heyday for like just being able to. I love how John Mulaney talks about it in his stand-up, where he's like, back in the day, they're like, there's, excuse me, detective, there's a big pool of blood over here. He's like, gross. Anyway, about this hunch of mine.
He's not wrong. That's what they thought. Yep. And they'd be like, oh, a big pool of blood. Let's go walk through it.
Yeah, let's just, watch your shoes. Splish, splash.
Yeah. Let's touch everything.
Touch everything. Walk through the blood.
Let onlookers come in. So I was getting really frustrated because I had this whole list of cases that were solved using this technology, but so many of them were just little, there wasn't enough information. It was just this is the crime, it got solved. There was nothing on the victim, there was nothing really on the killer, there was just nothing substantial. So I was just really kind of going in circles, trying to find a case that was really impactful. And I think I did it. I think I found one.
Woo!
And before I get into the details, I do want to say that this was featured on an Unsolved Mysteries episode 27 in season 3. However, good luck finding that episode because I couldn't fucking find it to save my life. I got on Prime, I got on Hulu, I got on YouTube, and season 3 stops at episode 22 everywhere I look. So I could not find the GD video of that episode. But I did find another podcast that has covered this case in a kind of a different lens. And their podcast, I have it in my notes up here. Maybe I just want to, if anybody wants to go listen to that podcast, they just talk about it in a different kind of lens other than this technology that we're about to get into. Where did I find it? Oh, okay. The podcast is called They Will Kill. That's the podcast. So yeah, go listen to the podcast, go watch the episode if you can find it. If you do find it, please send it to me because I want to fucking watch it. That'd be great. Okay. I know it aired in like 1991, so the technology for their filming is going to be awesome. Okay.
So forget how long that show's been on.
Forever. 1980s, late 1980s. And then there's the new one now that's really good too. And they wonder why people our age are obsessed with true crime. I mean, hello, we put ourselves to bed in the 80s to unsolve mysteries.
Yeah, I was thinking about that the other day because it's like, oh, if you're a white woman, you're obsessed with true crime. When I was in middle school, I did one of my book reports on the different types of death penalties. So I think this has been a lifelong obsession.
I was definitely not allowed to be anywhere near that, but when we were all asked to pick our Greek or Roman mythological characters, I threatened all the boys and fought them because I wanted Hades. So I guess we're still,
It's part of our fabric. There's nothing I can do.
There's nothing I can do. Not even in 4th grade.
So for this case, we're going to go visit Colorado in the year 1982. And we're going to talk about the 2 victims primarily. And their names were Barbara Jo Oberhautzer and Annette K. Schnee. Going forward, though, we're going to call Barbara Bobby Joe because that's what people called her. So we're going to respect that. So we're going to talk about Bobby Joe and Annette. Bobby Joe. Bobby Joe.
Bobby Joe. Bobby Joe.
That's how you know you're white. Tell me you're white without telling me you're white.
Bobby Joe.
And the second one is Joe. Okay, so we're going to be in Breckenridge, Colorado. Now, both of these women both disappeared on January 6th, 1982 in Breckenridge, Colorado. So very, very cold also. All right, so 29-year-old Bobby Jo Howard. I'm going to mess up her last name so many times.
We're just going to go with Bobby Joe. BJ.
There we go. Bobby Joe. Maybe not BJ, just Bobby Joe. Okay, 29-year-old Bobby Joe and 21-year-old Annette Schnee both disappeared on January 6th, 1982. They were last seen separately in Breckenridge, Colorado, a small ski resort in the Rocky Mountains with a population at the time of about 1,200 people. Okay. Jump back over here. Sorry, I'm kind of in a few places. All right. On January 7th, Bobby's body was found off Highway 9 near a scenic overlook near the summit of Hoosier Pass, 5 miles south of Breckenridge. She had been shot twice, but the bullets are not what killed her. Only 2 pieces of evidence were found, a set of house keys and an orange sock. Police were mystified. The keys belonged to her, but the sock did not. Now, when she went missing she had gotten off of work and her husband had called her. His name was Jeff, and he told her he'd come pick her up. And I guess in this little tiny town, like everybody knew each other and like hitchhiking was not a big deal. In fact, it was a common practice. They even had like a common place that people could go wait to be picked up. Just like, okay, hey, you need a ride, let's go. So witnesses had said that they had seen Bobby Joe around this area, but she never made it home that night. She never got home to her husband. And then these skiers found her, but didn't approach the body. They knew they had found a body and then went immediately to the police, and her body was found the next day. Okay, so police were mystified. The keys belonged to her, but the sock did not. 6 months later, and 13 miles away, Annette's body was found. This time in
13
Sacramento Creek,
months?
6 months, 13 miles.
13 miles. Okay.
She had also been shot to death. Incredibly, she was wearing the other orange sock.
I think I remember hearing about this case because the orange sock sounds familiar.
Weird.
Well, fun fact, if you Google orange sock murder, you're going to get a lot of cases because apparently orange socks in murder cases is a thing.
Note to self, don't buy any orange socks.
Don't, because you don't want to end up in that list. Yeah,
Yep.
buy like plaid, I don't know. Okay, the murdered women were both area residents. They had both disappeared on the same day, January 6th, and had been shot with a medium caliber revolver. By all accounts, they had never met. Their bodies were found 13 miles apart and 6 months in time span. However, police are certain that they were murdered on the same night by the same man. Of course, the main suspect immediately became Bobby Joe's husband, Jeff. And since those murders, he staunchly maintained his innocence. In fact, he reported her missing at 3 a.m. when he woke up and she wasn't home. He went immediately to the police, but they refused to file a missing persons report because it was still at night. She might have fallen asleep at a friend's house or something. And so they refused to do anything about it that night. So he started getting like close friends and family together to start searching for her. So when the sun come up, he went searching for her, and they were trying to trace her steps. And he spots an item like in a field, and it's her backpack. So he finds her backpack, takes it to the police, and is like, look, this is where her backpack was. This is hers. It has her stuff in it. And so he's really trying to cooperate. He wants to find his wife, but he's just at the top of their list as far as suspects go. Okay. So just days before she had vanished, he and Bobby Joe had decided they were going to try and start having kids. They had been married since July 1977, so they were married about 4.5 years before her murder. Now, he described their marriage as very loving. They were in love. They were going to have children. But Bobby Joe's friends and family gave some different accounts, saying like that there was just something off about their relationship. Something didn't make sense. Like it just didn't feel right to like their friends and family. And so that kept pushing him further and further up the suspect list, because now the stories don't match. And his alibi was, hey, I was home alone. I made dinner for us. Bobby Joe had just gotten a promotion at her job. And so he was waiting for her to come home and celebrate with her, and fell asleep on the couch. So he didn't have really a solid alibi that could be, corroborated with
I always
else.
feel bad though when when you're alone, and let's say you are an innocent person and you're like, I just was alone. I don't know, like I don't have a receipt for
being alone.
Yeah, for being alone. It's like when they're like, you have a package that's missing and they're like, can you please send a picture? And you're like, what specifically would you like a picture of? My hand without the item in it? Here it is, not here.
Here it is, not in my tiny hand.
You can't prove a negative.
Yeah.
Okay. So she had worked as a receptionist and was celebrating her promotion when she'd gone out with friends that night. And so he knew like this was not normal. She had left that morning at 7:15 a.m. and hitchhiked to work. Hitchhiking was quite common in the area, and the residents often stopped for people that they knew. At 6:20 p.m., she called home to tell him that she was at the village pub having drinks, celebrating her promotion with her friends. He made dinner and waited for her to come home. And again, he woke up in the middle of the night. She hadn't come home. He went to go look for her. There it is. Okay, I had to find my place again. All right. So this next morning, also, a farmer who lived 30 miles outside of Breckenridge found Bobby Joe's driver's license on his property. So Jeff went with 2 of his friends to pick up the license. On the way, this is when they made their discovery. While driving past a field, he noticed something blue in the snow, and it was her backpack that she had left with for work. He also found one of her gloves, and on the glove, it was spattered with blood and several bloody tissues. Jeff's friends helped him to organize a search, and they insisted he remain at home while they set out cross country. 2 hours later, the search party came across Bobby Joe's lifeless body. She was found more than 15 miles from where her backpack was discovered. Police found 3 puzzling clues. Only her footprints were at the crime scene. A plastic cord was tied around one of her wrists. And then, so that plastic cord, it was a zip tie, and there was another zip tie like looped through it, but it wasn't attached to her. So what they speculate happened was that she was being bound by her, by the killer,
Or
but she
whoever,
was able
yeah.
to get free from it and get away from him. That's what they were starting to speculate. And
Okay.
of course, they also had the single orange sock that was found nearby.
Was
They had
that
no,
and that sock wasn't hers?
no. I from what I believe, and I think it might mention it, but I think she was fully clothed when she was found.
Mhm.
So she had her socks on.
Mysterious orange socks.
Mhm. So the same day Bobby Joe's body was found, Annette was reported missing. She was a chambermaid and a cocktail waitress who worked in Frisco and lived in Blue River. Like Bobby Joe, she often hitchhiked to work. She was also an aspiring model. She was trying to get into acting. And I think in one of the things I read, she was also like either applying to be a flight attendant or had worked as a flight attendant. Which is very beautiful. When I post the pictures, you'll see these women. And then so from the start, they knew that these were connected because of that orange sock. Like it was determined, like, yes, for sure, this orange sock
A
belonged to
weird
Annette.
detail.
And it's
Yeah.
a very weird detail. This case has a lot of weird fucking details that are like, how did that even come to fruition? It's crazy. When investigators first asked Jeff if he knew Annette, he denied it. Several days later, after seeing her picture in the newspaper, he contacted the police and said that he did in fact know her and had given her his business card. He claimed that he had once picked her up when she was hitchhiking. He said that he never saw or heard from her after that. And so it was confirmed that when Annette's body was found in her, she had a plastic wallet and she had 2 things in her wallet. And one of those things was Jeff's business card. So again, like that, the police are like, man,
Okay, you clearly
you know both these women. You're a little bit too aggressive in wanting to help. But they had nothing, for lack of a better word, they didn't have a smoking gun. They didn't have enough solid evidence to really try him. And he passed like 2 polygraph tests. You know, he was
That's wild.
very cooperative. Okay. Where was I? All right. He claimed that he had once picked her up when she was hitchhiking. He said that he never saw or heard from her after that. On July 3rd, 1982, 6 months after she disappeared, her body was found. Police were stunned when they discovered she was wearing the matching orange sock. Jeff's business card was found in her wallet. Her backpack was later found close to where Bobby Joe's body was found. Investigators began to focus on Jeff since he had connections to both victims. So then what happened on January 6, 1982? That afternoon, Annette left her chambermaid job in Frisco early because she was not feeling well. She was last seen leaving a pharmacy in Breckenridge about 4 p.m. while in deep conversation with an unknown dark-haired woman. She was supposed to work at a bar called the Flip Side at 8 p.m. that night. Police believe that around 5 p.m. she set out to hitchhike home and get ready for work. The killer picked her up and drove 20 miles south of Breckenridge, taking her down a small dead-end road. She was then either made to disrobe or was undressed by him. She was sexually assaulted and then allowed to get dressed. While she was doing so, she apparently found one long sock and put it on, but could not find the second one. But then put a bootie on her foot and put her boots on. She apparently escaped. While running away, she was shot in the back. Police believe that the killer then drove back to Breckenridge and found a second victim, Bobby Joe. He drove her 10 miles south of Breckenridge.
Same night. That's such unusual behavior. That's really unusual behavior.
Very quick. Like no cooling off time.
Yeah, that's extra strange.
He drove her 10 miles south to the parking lot of a scenic overlook, where he apparently attempted to rape her. Police believe that she fought him and subsequently escaped from the vehicle. While escaping, the other orange booty came out with her. So she ran down the highway toward her home. It is believed that he tried to stop her and talk to her. When he pulled the gun out, she ran into the snow. He then shot her twice as she turned away from him. After that, she ran up over a small embankment of snow and then drove down the other side into a deep snow where she was later found dead. So she gets away, she gets shot, she's still running, she slides down this hill, it's freezing cold. So she bled to death and she froze to death. That's how this woman died, but she died fighting. Jeff does not believe that Bobby Joe would have gotten into a vehicle with strangers. He points out that they had talked earlier about him giving her a ride, but that she could have called back if she needed one. He thinks that she knew someone at the bar and that they had left together with the promise of them taking her home. Approximately 2 months after Bobby Joe's murder, Jeff submitted to a polygraph test and passed. From day one, he insisted that he had an alibi. According to him, during the time of the murders, when they were committed, he was with an acquaintance who had dropped by for a visit. But for nearly 9 years, no one could find this man. Finally, in December 1990, he surfaced. When police interviewed him, he stated that he had been in Jeff's house that night. However, the times he gave police did not match up with the times Jeff gave them. As a result, they were unable to determine whether or not the man was with Jeff during the time of the murders.
Interesting.
And Jeff at that point still remained a main suspect in the case. He believes that if investigators had focused on other avenues and leads instead of focusing on him, they could have been able to find out who really killed Bobby Joe and Annette. So Jeff was always a suspect. And they found that it was more than a coincidence that he had known both victims and discovered Bobby's backpack in a remote field. So at the time when they also, I don't know if I wrote it down in here, but the blood spatter that was on her glove, they at the time back in 1982, they were only really able to test it for blood type, and the blood type on the glove was the same as Bobby Joe's. So they were under the assumption that it was her blood.
Hers. Yeah. Okay.
Spoiler alert, it was not.
Ooh.
Police looked into several different suspects in the case. One was a cab driver by the name of Thomas Edward Luther, who beat and raped a hitchhiker after picking her up in Breckenridge in February 1982.
That seems
While
fine.
in jail, he allegedly bragged about being responsible for the murders. According to his girlfriend, he did not come home on the night of the murders. This man has a girlfriend.
Who is this? Okay, I have questions for her. Who? Yeah.
He also lied to investigators and said he was at work at the time. Another suspect was alleged serial killer Henry Lee Lucas. Yet another suspect was Tracy Petrocelli, who murdered his fiancée in 1981 and went on a multiple state crime spree. During this time, he stayed at Annette's workplace, the Holiday Inn in Frisco. Police would likely to question the unidentified dark-haired woman last seen with Annette on January 6th. She was described as a white female, 5'4", and slender build. She was not considered a suspect. They would also like to identify a man whose photograph was in her wallet. So the only other item in her wallet when she was found was a very handsome, sorry, my back is like hurts. A handsome military man, like I don't remember what branch, but nobody in her friend circle knew who this person was, and nobody in her family knew who this person was. So she just had this picture and nobody knew. Okay. So let me jump. I want to get all the good stuff in here. All right, so let me go back over here. So that night when both women were murdered, the weather was really cold, and oh wait, do you want to know the twist, or do you want to know the how it was solved? Which one first?
The twist.
Let's hear the twist.
So the same night that these two women go missing, miraculously, this driver in Breckenridge, his vehicle had slid off the road, and he had gotten out of the vehicle to try to walk to a local like ski chalet that he remembered being nearby. But he goes about 100 to 200 yards and decides it's way too fucking cold. I'm not going to make it. So he goes back to his truck, and a low flying aircraft comes over, and he's like signaling them with his lights and a flashlight. They pick him up and rescue him. This makes national news. 1982. Everybody's like, oh my God, Alan Lee Phillips is this man who SOS and been spotted by a United Airlines passenger
How
plane.
fortunate.
And he made the comment of like how cold it was, and just it was a miracle that he was rescued by this plane that you could just the possibility of that is so mind-boggling to me, that all of these things happened and he's
All the
rescued
same night.
all the same night. He's stranded in the cold. He got his truck stuck in a snowdrift. When they pick him up, his face is covered in scratches. And he tells them, oh, it was just because I slipped coming out of the truck when I was trying to hike. And that's where the scratches are from. And they're like, oh, we're just so glad
okay.
you're-"
It was a bramble bush.
Yeah. 20 below zero, this man is saved. Why?
So, how did they solve it, AJ?
Okay, so going back to the genetic genealogy. All right. Hold on. Now I'm jumping back too many documents. Good Lord. AJ, get to it. Okay.
AJ is the master of suspense.
Sorry, but you got the twist.
We got the twist.
So now, initially, police believed that the blood found on the tissues and Bobby's glove belonged to her because it was the same blood type. However, in the 1990s, when they tested it again, technology's a tiny bit better, they determined that it came from a male and that it did not, in fact, belong to Jeff. So her husband is now ruled out as a suspect. It only took over 15 years. As a result, and this of other evidence, including several alibi witnesses, he was eventually cleared as a suspect in the murders. Testing also determined that the blood did not belong to either of the other suspects, Luther or Petrocelli. On February 21st, 2021, 70-year-old Alan Lee Phillips was arrested and charged with the murders. He was also charged with kidnapping and assault with a deadly weapon. Investigators aided by United Data Connect used genetic genealogy to link the DNA evidence to him. This process involves the DNA sample of the unknown suspect, etc. Exactly what I covered in the beginning. So investigators suspect that Philip may have been involved in other crimes throughout Colorado. No duh, you think? Interestingly, it was discovered that on the same night as the murders, he was rescued. There's the plot twist. So in September 2022, Phillips went on trial. And on September 15th, a jury convicted him of all charges, including first-degree murder after deliberation and first-degree murder involving felony kidnapping and robbery. On November 7th, he was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Sadly, Bobby Joe's brother Kelly and father Thomas passed away before this case was solved. Now, on Annette Schnee, I don't have as much information about her as Bobby Joe, but that orange sock connected the two women and undoubtedly helped solve their own murders. So that's the case of Bobby Joe.
Oh my!
A weird orange sock and a killer rescued by an airplane the same night he killed two people.
I wonder if they would have, if they would have found out it was him if he had died out there in the elements.
Maybe
eventually, because his family members had put up their DNA in the databases.
I was looking up because tons of cases have been solved, and actually a lot of people have been exonerated with genealogy testing, but I thought this was interesting. So Maryland and Montana back in 2021 passed laws limiting law enforcement's ability to use genetic genealogy. And why I thought this was interesting is so they're calling this woman a privacy advocate. Her name is Miss Ram. I don't know what her first name is, but It says that she was worried about genetic genealogy since 2018 when it was used to great fanfare to reveal the identity of the Golden State Killer. And I wonder how your mind works when a serial killer is caught using something and you're like, this needs to be limited.
Right?
So
Well, I think there's a lot of people though, and I had this argument recently where people are like, well, I'm never going to submit my, my material for, to find out anything because I don't want them using it. And I'm like, I think that there is a certain line of, I'm a big fan of, I don't mind if I lose some of my privacy if it is for the greater good, where like understanding diseases or catching serial killers, like it's worth it. And
or identifying victims who didn't have an
yes,
identity, babies that are found, children, women. These people are now getting a name.
Yeah. So I'm like,
yeah.
Am I as an individual, am I more important than this knowledge? I'm not. And I think it's ridiculous if anybody feels that way. This personal opinion.
And I think with anything, I think consent is key. And if you're the one submitting your DNA and you say, yes, I do allow it to be used in public databases, you've given consent. And I think that that's the important part. And if you say, no, I do not give consent.
Well, that's so this article is from the New York Times. I'll have it in the show notes. So for the law in Maryland, investigators can only use genealogy companies that have informed their customers that they're going to be using their, their genetic markers and their DNA to, third-party companies to potentially solve crimes. To that, Ms. Ram said, "We know well that most people do not read these kinds of forms closely. This is likely to generate unwitting inclusion rather than actual consent." Like,
okay, well, maybe read some stuff. I don't know. Like
someone else who's outspoken against it, a Florida woman, doesn't have her name.
That's all we need, Florida woman, full stop.
Oh God.
So I can't make this shit up. In 2018, police in Orlando, Florida asked a woman for a DNA test, telling her that they believed she was related to a dead person they were trying to identify. She complied, only to find out that they were investigating her son, who was subsequently arrested and charged with murder.
Now that's entrapment. Isn't it?
I mean, the police can lie to you.
True.
And then, so in Maryland, one of the senators was trying to just ban genealogy testing outright. That didn't go through. But so there's a stipulation in the law that by 2024, genealogists working on cases, they must be professionally certified. That doesn't exist. Like that credentialing doesn't exist. So I wonder what's going to happen in 2024 with Maryland.
I don't know, but it sounds like that would be researching genetic genealogies for a criminal department. Sounds like my dream job. I would love that.
So maybe we start a certification program and then we hook it up in Maryland.
If anybody knows, at me.
And it's interesting. Like, I guess I'd have to look into a little bit more, but they're saying it goes against the Fourth Amendment, like the rights to privacy and what's it called? Search and seizure. My brain's not working.
I mean, when they wrote those, though, they didn't know about any of these possibilities. Like so many of the things when they were written of you can or can't do these things were not written in the mind of like what's happening in 2023.
Right.
So,
well, one of the big things is they're like, well, we already have CODIS that we can use to identify people. So why do we need, genetic genealogy? But CODIS uses about 24 markers. Genetic markers to identify a person, and these genetic genealogy branches use hundreds of thousands of genetic markers. So it seems like
way more accurate.
Right.
You're also able to get, now with the technology we have now, like using a blood sample, they could even construct what their phenotypes would look like. What is their bone structure? What is their what is their race? What is their all these things.
You
and it's
mean
incredible.
they do it really inaccurately on bones, but kind of like that, sort of.
Kind of like that. Yeah.
I just love that because there is, I mean, probably hundreds of thousands of cold cases that haven't been solved. And it makes me happy to think that these like rapists and these murderers are looking over their shoulder. Like, I didn't know
snap.
DNA existed in the 80s and I left all kinds of evidence behind. And now
maybe don't murder people. Maybe don't do that. Maybe just
don't hurt people.
But at the same time, I can't help but get so angry because these men have been allowed to live for decades, their whole life, and they get caught in their 70s or 80s, like the Golden State Killer. Like, what kind of justice?
It's not the same.
That?
Yeah,
it is justice. It is getting answers,
it's closure.
It gives a level of knowledge, but it just makes me fucking angry that they got to live and probably are guilty of so many other crimes, just like this guy, Alan Phillips. You cannot tell me that was either his first time or his last time doing something like this.
Yeah, you go and you kill
with it and getting rescued.
2 women the same night. There's no way that was the first.
But you know what? He got caught, and that's what counts.
That's what counts. I just cried openly in my bathtub, as you well know.
The Skittles.
All the Skittles.
All the Skittles. Well, that's my case, ladies and gentlemen, and everybody.
Bravo, AJ. Bravo.
I'm glad that you brought it because I'd heard of the orange sock case. I didn't realize that they had solved it.
Well, there's a lot of orange sock cases. They're like go Google it. I found at least 4.
I wonder if I'm thinking of the same one then. I'll have to look it up. Maybe. I think Morbid covered it a while ago.
Well, thank you,
did you
AJ.
hear on Morbid that they identified the Somerset man? Or the Somerton man in Australia. His identity had like not been known. And his identity was solved through genetic genealogy. God, what is that case? Like he was found fully clothed on a beach, like with dress shoes. Like this was like in the 1940s.
Oh yeah. I didn't know that they solved that one.
They figured it out.
And it was because of genetic genealogy. Yeah, Somerset man. His body was found in December 1948 on a beach in Somerton Park, a suburb of Adelaide, South Australia. And it's a wild case, like just like the little bits of clues that they got for him, but his identity was eventually solved from genetic genealogy. Morbid is a fantastic case on him. I think it's a 2-parter. It was really good.
Not because of genetic genealogy, but cases that are being solved. The Delphi murders, the man on the bridge, they arrested somebody.
I saw that.
Which it was kind of weird how it took them so long to arrest him,
and he was living in the town, like he was a resident.
Yeah, so he hasn't been at trial yet, innocent until proven guilty, but wow. Season of justice. Well, thanks, AJ.
You're welcome. I just want really quick. Are y'all either one of you following the cult mom case? Lori Vallow Daybell and her husband Chad Daybell.
Is she the one that like her husband died and then she married somebody else and then her kids went missing and she was found living in Hawaii?
Yep.
Is she on trial?
She's in jail awaiting trial. She's trying to get them to throw out the case because her right to a speedy trial has been violated because she's been in jail over 1,000 days.
But where's her kids?
Dead.
Did they find them?
Yeah, they found them on the property.
Oh, okay.
They were murdered.
Jesus.
And for months, she was collecting the little boy's social security because he was a ward of the state. She adopted him. He's like technically her nephew, but she ends up adopting him, getting his social security benefits, and she continues to cash him in after he goes missing.
Why would you adopt a kid and then kill them?
She believed that she was a divine goddess, that she could like see dark and light in people. And if she saw dark in you, then demons were attached to you, and that she saw demons in her children. And it's a crazy case. Okay. I'm following it. It's wild. It might be something we get to cover. It's going to be wild. It's going to be, it's tragic, but fascinating.
What is wrong with people?
So many things.
Okay, well, thanks for listening. Follow us on
Thank you,
the
everybody.
social media spaces. Leave us a kind review. Tell your friends.
Bourbon Wine and True Crime at Bourbon Wine and True Crime.
Is really that our address?
Oh, I don't know. Do we have a website?
No, I mean like what is our email?
Oh, Bourbon Wine and True Crime at yahoo.com.
Yep.
Nice.
Send us
Like
case
us,
suggestions.
subscribe, send us suggestions.
Leave a
We love
5-star
you.
review.
Woohoo.
Woo-hoo-hoo.
Yeah.
Bye,
Until
everybody.
next time.
Bye.
Bye.
Love you.